All right, Elise, thank you. On the Democratic side, Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley running for governor. Remember, he dropped out. He came back in. He has the endorsement of Governor Tony Evers, and he is trying to catch Francesca Hong, who had big leads in the polls. Our Drew Best live in Milwaukee. He's at the Crowley campaign headquarters tonight. Drew, what do you know?
Hey, Chris, we're at the Hyatt Regency Ballroom. They just opened the doors to some of Crowley's supporters, and we're starting to see some of them file in over here. We have talked to a few of those voters so far, and at this point, a lot of what we're hearing is that they're cautiously optimistic. They're hoping to see, of course, David Crowley to come out on top in this race, but they just don't know at this point, and they really want, this is the person that they hope gets the Democratic nod. And Crowley himself was also seen casting his ballot this morning here in Milwaukee, his family joining him at the polls. While he has trailed in recent polls to Francesca Hong, Crowley feels he's gained momentum towards the end of this primary race. He did double Hong's fundraising totals in the month of July, but his campaign has been anything but normal to this point. As you had mentioned, Chris, Crowley had dropped out of the race in early July, opting to endorse Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez. But a campaign finance scandal forced Rodriguez to end her campaign. 1 day later, and 10 days after backing out of the primary, Crowley would re-enter the race, quickly receiving a key endorsement from current Governor Tony Evers, who joined him on the campaign trail in the days leading up to the primary. Evers says he's backing Crowley because he feels Crowley can articulate the issues of the day, and he thinks Crowley can get things done as his successor. But another thing worth noting, our Milwaukee partners have reported a potential low voter turnout here in Milwaukee County. As of 6 o'clock, there was only about 54,000 rather, in person in absentee votes cast combined. And this would certainly hurt Crowley's chances if that turns out to be the case. We'll keep you updated on everything we hear from the Crowley campaign later tonight. But for now, reporting live in Milwaukee, Drew Best, Action 2 News.
All right, Drew, thank you. Yeah, that would be very interesting numbers coming out of Milwaukee County if the city of Milwaukee numbers are very low. Businessman Joel Brennan holding his event tonight, as is Kelda Royce. Brennan in Milwaukee at the Central Standard Craft House and Kitchen. Royce gathering in Madison with her backers. She is at the Cambridge Winery Tasting Room.
And Democratic candidate Francesca Hong is holding her watch party tonight as those results are going to, we actually are getting some numbers now at the bottom of our screen. So those numbers finally starting to come in. She's one of the most closely watched candidates in this race. Chief political reporter Jason Zimmerman is at Hong's watch party. He's joining us live from Madison right now. Jason.
Yeah, Cammie, we just heard the crowd erupt a couple of times as we've seen some numbers flash on the screen just momentarily. Nothing big right now, showing both candidates 33. Crowley had 33.7 to Hong with 33.6. Not much in yet. Those numbers are going to change, but it's gotten the crowd a bit excited. It is packed in here. We're tight quarters. We just got inside the Atwood Music Hall. There is a crowd in here gathered. There's a lot of media in here as well. National media on hand to cover this very important race. And that's because if Francesca Hong prevails tonight in this primary, she will go on to the general election, setting the stage for her to become the first Democratic Socialist governor to potentially be elected anywhere in the country right now. This would come after big wins for the DSA in Michigan just last week in the primary there for a Senate seat, and then of course the New York mayor's race, which took place already. That being one of the highest wins so far, one of the biggest offices the DSA is able to claim. So they're looking to pick up Wisconsin too, and that's important because this is a purple state. So to see how well the platform can play in places like the Midwest. Now let's get to this morning, and that's when Hong voted here in the capital city, where she also serves as a state representative. Afterwards, she did take questions from reporters. She spent the entire day campaigning, crisscrossing the Madison area. She knows she's got to run up the numbers here. This is an important area for her to compete against David Crowley, who's obviously going to do well in Milwaukee. Those are the two big Democratic strongholds across the state. Now, she is considered the front runner. She's led in the polls since almost the very beginning. However, there is some concern even within the Democratic Party that her DSA platform might not do so well in the general election, especially among independents. Here's what she said this morning.
The things that we are fighting for, universal child care, the fully funding public schools. You know, today is the day that the Green Bay Packers were founded, our publicly owned NFL team. I think that Wisconsin has a proud history of progressivism, and the policies that we are fighting for honor that, but more importantly, they honor working class people.
And we do have people inside right now. Watching the numbers come in, and we see that David Crowley pulled ahead by maybe 2 percentage points. But again, this is still really early. I see it jumped again. He's now up 39.7 to 34.4. But again, it depends on where those numbers are coming in. There's going to be a big difference between, like I mentioned, Dane County and Milwaukee County. And again, the key for Hong tonight is to have big numbers in Dane County so she can offset those Milwaukee numbers and also keep it close throughout the rest of the state. That's why she spent time campaigning in northwest Wisconsin and in the Fox Valley and northeast Wisconsin as well, our area, over this past weekend. Reporting live in Madison, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.